Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing But Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
Hello, everyone. It's Julie Schrager, your host of Nothing But Julie. Happy Hump Day and happy February. Hope everything is going well for all of you. On my Monday mission, I had discussed becoming the best version of yourself. I enjoyed that few minutes discussing it, that I wanted to continue on with it on my Wednesday podcast, as I felt that there was so much more to explore about this particular phrase that so many people have been using I think I started to hear it a few years ago, maybe 2018, 2019. And it's become so much more significant recently because of COVID and how to become the best version of yourself amongst a pandemic. And so it got me thinking, you have two kinds of people, in this pandemic. One is a person who just completely loses sight of themselves and allows themselves to what I consider to be in a downward spiral or free fall. And that's okay. It happens to all of us. It is a very difficult time. And there's no book or even a chapter written on how to deal with a pandemic. I mean, no one in the world would have thought that this was something that we all needed to know. It's like becoming a mother or a father, a parent. You're not given a manual or a test drive. You're basically in it. As soon as you have your baby or babies, that's it. You could read as much as you want, but there is no manual. There is nothing that can prepare you for what's going to come, because it's all individual. So you could be the kind of person that just maybe, let's say, gained weight during the pandemic, lost your job. Maybe you were an emphatic social person, and it was very difficult for you to come out of that because of the pandemic. Or maybe you're the other person. Maybe you're the person that continued as best as you could in such a horrible time by continuing to eat well, continuing to be physically active, and finding ways to be physically active, staying as social as you could by talking on the phone, doing FaceTime, Zoom, texting. Maybe you found a different outlet. So to me, there is no gray area when it comes to being the best version of yourself. I think that you're either all in or you're not in at all. So for me, during the pandemic, I definitely gained a few pounds, and had to learn to be less social, as did everybody. My job in life is social and physical. And when you have those two things going for you in your life, and it comes to an abrupt stop, which is what transpired, it's very difficult to become part of that newness. How do you cope? How do you, deal with this particular new set of rules? I succumbed to the fact that there was nothing I could do. And that, excuse me, in order for me to press on, I needed to find new ventures. I needed to find new ways of continuing with my life instead of just sitting around and doing nothing, which is kind of what transpired in the beginning, which was, going from having a job and being happy and being, physically fit more so than not, to nothing. And so for the first couple of months, I definitely fell into a rut, didn't know what I was going to do. I became very down and questionable about life, and then realized, okay, I cannot continue doing this or going down this road. It was becoming detrimental to my health. And I was becoming desperate in that I needed to find something to keep me going. Many people took up painting, baking, cooking, puzzles, and did whatever they could to keep themselves busy and stimulated. And I too did that, but I needed more stimulation. I am a worker by nature. I needed to continue to find something to do, or at least pretend to have something in my life that was meaningful, since my job was on hiatus. So I thought to myself, how can I become the best version of myself during this pandemic? And let me tell you, it was a challenge. So for those of you that are listening to this, I hope you find solace in the fact that you are not alone. You are not alone. Though we're far apart. I don't even know if those are the words. Michael Jackson. Yes, child of the 80s. But I needed to find something that I knew I was going to be happy with, that was going to continue past this pandemic. Now, we're still in the pandemic. We're worse off than we've ever been. Although we have the vaccine and there is, the parting of the clouds and the sun is starting to shine through, but we are going to be in this for the long haul. I decided that I was going to start this podcast, as did many other people. So I thought, okay, what can I do to be the best version of myself? What can I do? And it's not always just about improving upon yourself. Although, and I mentioned this in my blog, it's not always about improving upon. It can also be about seeking new things. What is it about you that you think you can do to make yourself happier, to get out of a rut, to enjoy new fun things? Well, I decided to start the podcast, like I just mentioned, because I felt that, okay, what can I do right now to make myself better? What version of myself can I make better? And so I enhanced upon the fact that I always wanted to dabble in psychology, and I did take it as a major in college. But from my own perspective, what can I do to let people know how I feel about, particular things? And so the podcast was a really great idea. It gave me things to look forward to. Plus, I was able to not only use my creativity in the podcasts, but when I advertise my podcasts on my social media platforms, I can use certain software programs to allow myself to be creative in letting people know what's to come. And so it was like killing two birds with one stone. And I think I have surpassed 25 episodes. And I met someone who has become a wonderful co-host, and I feel like I've become a better version of myself, where in certain respects, where I now can be happier than I was a year ago when I was in this rut. Well, a little less than a year ago, I should say. And so, moving on, well, in my blog, if you want to listen to it, it's listen to it. If you want to read it, it's in all of my links on all of my social media, but it's nothingbutjulie.wordpress.com. And it's not always about what can I do next? What can I do next? I put a limit on becoming the best version of myself, in that I discussed that it could actually turn into something that it can become detrimental. For example, if you keep trying to become the best version of yourself, you will never be satisfied. You will continue reaching your goals. And in doing that, you can become depressed, more anxious. You could even become obsessed with becoming a better person. I did not set out to do that. The whole point of me wanting to become a better version of myself was to see what areas can benefit from me pushing the envelope a little. But I decided that I'm going to stop, a quarter of the way and not continue on, because I can very quickly become anchored to this phenomenon of becoming the best version of yourself, and not let it go, and defeating the entire purpose of the journey. So that's why I said I'm going to do a few mild things that I know I have been wanting to do, that I do feel has a little bit of room for improvement. And then I'm going to stop and reflect and think, do I need to continue? And if I do, I might give myself another 1 or 2 things to do. But I'm the one that has the power to stop when I want to. And I made that agreement with myself, like mentally. And as much as it sounds kind of ridiculous, I did. I made an agreement with myself, because I can easily get carried away, as do many of us. Like, let's say you got some news about something, and you needed to find out more. Well, what is the first thing we pretty much all do? We go straight to our phones or our computers and look it up, and wind up making ourselves crazy. We're all guilty of it, me included. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to become obsessed with becoming a better person, because you will never be perfect, and you will never be satisfied. So how can you become satisfied with yourself? How can you become a better version without allowing yourselves to get too in deep with it and continue it to the point where you're now unhappy? Well, you have to give yourself boundaries, and you need to know yourself well enough to where you are saying, okay, this is where I will stop. And you literally stop. So right now, my main goal of becoming a better Julie was to find a way to keep myself busy and indulge in something that I felt I could not only be good at, but perhaps help others. And that was the point of the podcast. And that was also why a few months after I started, I felt that having a podcast co-host, was probably a really great addition to take exactly what it is that I wanted to talk about or what she wants to talk about and discuss it as a team. I did some research on podcasting and read that having a co-host is a really great idea because you are getting different sides of the spectrum or the same. And sometimes people like to hear camaraderie besides just hearing me. Another thing that I definitely needed to do to become a better person, a more whole person, was to become physically active again. Living in Florida, excuse me, it was very, very difficult when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, or when we all went into lockdown, to, I'm so sorry, I have something in my throat. It got very hot in, I would say, late March, April. And not only did my business suffer, but I suffered physically because I'm an outdoors person. And when it becomes brutally hot, it is so difficult to do anything outside. I actually get physically sick, if you can understand that. I cannot work out, walk, ride my bike. I can't do any of those things I enjoy when it's so hot out. So I succumb to the fact that I am now indoors. And aside from the fact that almost everyone is as well because of the lockdown, what could I do, to keep myself physically fit? Well, at the time, I didn't do anything. I literally took a hiatus from that. And that's when I started to gain weight and I started cooking and I enjoyed it. But, the pounds started to show. And so now it's more about, okay, I got a home gym, which made it much easier now to work out, but finding the motivation when it's in your house and you're already in your house. To go to that gym area of my house was so difficult for me to even do. And I love doing cardio and high intensity and just had absolutely no desire to do that either. The desire and the motivation was definitely lacking. And then finally, as it started to get cooler, and I could start riding my bike and walking again and going, to different places and looking at different, scenery, I wound up getting this really bad sciatica pain that lasted almost 3 months. 3 months. And 3 months during maybe a 5 to 6 month cool down is a lot. And I just started feeling better maybe a month ago. So we're talking January. That gives me 2 months left of cool weather. So I have had to figure out ways of keeping myself motivated to continue making myself the best version of who I want to be. So it's not easy. I used to be in such great shape just doing things that I enjoyed. For example, I love landscaping, and I was so physically fit because every single day I would be doing something outside, whether it was planting a new plant or fertilizing or whatever it was, always carrying heavy things, always being physically fit. And I didn't have to work out. I didn't have to push myself to be physically fit because I was already doing it. But those days are gone. I'm over the landscaping. There's nothing more for me to do. My son is grown. He and I were out and about all the time, doing physical things, whether it was playing basketball in our driveway or running around or going on bikes and all that. All of that came to an abrupt stop. So I had to kind of retrain my brain into how I can stay physically fit on days when it's too hot out, when I don't have a partner, to help me stay physically fit. And so it's a mindset. And I think when you kind of allow yourself to believe that you can become a better version of who you are, you kind of use that as motivation. One of the things that I had done years ago when I was working was I worked for a fulfillment company where we actually created and shipped out and stored public speakers' materials. And I got to know many of these public speakers, and they were all different. One was about marketing. One was about real estate. One was about, again, self-improvement. One of the things that I do love, or that I've actually enjoyed doing, is listening to motivational speakers when I do walk or when I am working out. And one of my most favorite public speakers is Tony Robbins. And he actually has a little bit of a blog about becoming the best version of yourself. And in that, on his website, which you can look at, he questions at the beginning, what does it mean, when you say being the best version of yourself? And he says what I had said at the beginning. Does it mean that you are living up to your potential, or is there more to it? He goes on to say that, if you're like most people, most people ponder this question. And sometimes your answers fall short of your expectations. And so you need to really look inside yourself, he basically is saying, and ask yourself questions that lead to understand personal growth. That's what it's about. Personal growth. What can you do to grow personally? It's not really living up to what your potential is. I don't even like that word, potential. I like what he says, which is basically feeling fulfilled and maximizing your own personal growth. So what does it mean in his eyes to become the best version of yourself? Well, according to him, it means getting back to your quintessential self. That's it. Your quintessential self. Your typical, example of who you really are. And we sometimes lose sight of that when we're raising our children, when we are working, when you get so involved in your life that you forget to look at or take a pause and look at what you're maybe missing out on. And it's just pretty straightforward. Getting back to your quintessential self, your authentic self. And that's what self-discovery is all about. And it's not always easy, because with self-discovery, there are some things that you might find about yourself that you don't love. And it's very courageous if you want to take that journey to find your authentic self. Tony Robbins discusses feeling anxious about self-improvement. And I can totally agree with that. When I started on the journey of self-improvement, it reminded me of when I was writing down a workout regimen. And I was starting to get heart palpitations and anxiety, and I had no idea why. And I had to really look deep within myself. And I came to the realization that I was feeling anxious because I was starting something new. I didn't know if I could stick to it. And the fact that I actually knew I had to do it was causing some anxiety. And so it is normal, to feel a little bit of anxiety. I mean, every person is different and every person is unique. What might be right for your path is not the same for somebody else. We all have, different dreams and skills, experience, things that we want to enhance upon. And there is no map, for what the outcome is going to be. Because my path is my path. Your path is your path. It's unique, it's different, and it's mine. It's all mine. And so what Tony Robbins talks about is discovering who you really are. And he goes on to say that before you can be the best version of yourself, you have to, and I'm quoting, uncover your essential you-ness, the values, interests, and passions that define who you are in life and the world. And he goes on to say you basically need to have a conversation with yourself, just like you'd have on a first date. And you have to pretend that your authentic self is there with you. And you're asking somebody certain questions. Like he goes on to say, who do you enjoy being around? Or what's your happiest memory? And as you continue on with the dialogue, he says you should pay attention to your feelings. And if you notice any negative emotions, like I did, like anxiety, you're telling yourself subtle negative messages that can obscure your conversation. So just like me planning out my workout, I realized that this anxiety is telling myself that I may be afraid to fail, or I'm afraid of really finding myself, or I don't know, maybe there was something else going on besides just the working out. So the question is now, how do you become the best version of yourself? And the most important thing he says, and I loved reading this article, was to let go of limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, meaning most of us get held back by thoughts that are false. And when we recognize these thoughts and we can let go of them, which is not always easy, that is what can help us become the best version of ourselves. And you got to push forward and find that person you really are. And there's almost like a blockade, and it holds us back by these limited beliefs, or limiting beliefs, I should say, these untrue thoughts that we have about our nature. He goes on to say to amplify your strengths, that, and this is very important, and we tend to forget this until somebody says it, which is focusing on our strengths. We all have them. Sometimes we don't realize what they are, and maybe we need somebody who knows us well to tell us what our strengths are. But when you focus on them, when you find them and you focus on them, you get even stronger, and you become more confident and more yourself along the way. So finding what your strengths are actually can help you to become stronger, more confident, and focused. And sometimes when you hit a roadblock, which you will inevitably in your life with something or anything, when you focus on your strengths, that really helps when you hit these roadblocks, because you remember what it is you're bringing to the table, and you'll go on to crush those obstacles because you're focusing on your strengths. So Tony Robbins also goes on to talk about, developing a growth mindset, because we're not all made up of strengths. There's definitely points in ourselves that definitely require attention. And he says that successful people tackle this by having a growth mindset. And they believe that there are no weaknesses. There's only opportunities for improvement. So rather than focusing on what they do badly, they focus on how they can improve and take action to get there. Again, a mindset. We've all done this where we think negatively. So, okay, as a mom, rather than me say to my son, don't take out the Legos, I would say to him, or give him options. If you want to play with the Legos, then perhaps you can clean this up first. Or if you eat this fruit, we can have playtime. It's taking away the stigma of the negativity that we've all grown to have. And I really believe it's most especially with the generations prior to the millennials. Because, I come from a generation of lots of negative people because we were raised that way, because our parents were raised that way from the baby boomers. So it's just kind of how it is. But if you have this growth mindset, you believe that there's no weakness, you could turn things around and not focus on what you do badly. You can turn it around and say, well, now how can I improve upon this? What actions do I need to take to get there? And if you get rid of expectations, and we all have them, and if it wasn't for my sister pointing it out to me, I wouldn't have realized that I actually do have expectations with certain things in my life. And when she used that word, I was like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, oh my God, I think she's right. I do have certain expectations with certain things. And it was not easy to accept it, and it was not easy to tackle it. But what I do believe is what Tony Robbins says, that if you throw out these expectations, our beliefs are surrounded by the creation of our world. But unfortunately, these beliefs are not always our own. You've kind of built at least a small part of your identity on others' expectations. And so you've then, without realizing it, internalized values of others. It's like an unconscious thing. And so if you can bring those internalized values to the forefront into your consciousness, that's how you learn to be the best version of yourself. The vision of who you want to be has to be yours and nobody else's. But because we've built part of our identity on what others expect from us, it has a detriment to us, and it can stop us from doing certain things. And so once you learn how to bring those thoughts and those expectations to the forefront, and you now realize, oh my God, I've been doing this, I've been expected to do that. If you can just throw them out, I am telling you, that is the most important learning experience for you to become the best version of yourself. And that too goes along with shedding part of that identity. Once you come to the realization of what you want your best version of you to be, you're basically raising the bar. And you have to take that old part of yourself and let me just say, you have had that old part of yourself for a really long time, and that old part is going to keep on knocking and knocking and knocking, and is going to resist being, thrown to the curb because of insecurity and fear of the unknown. It's that fight or flight kind of thing. So I'm so used to being this way. I'm so used to identifying myself, with certain things, that how do I throw my old self away? You've got to find a way to shed that, and resisting the urge to kind of cling to what's become familiar, I guess. Something that has become a way of holding you back. And that is your old self, your old beliefs, things that you don't realize have become familiar and safe. And once you can figure out what those old identities are, you can then move on to become the best version of yourself. And you wind up having this can-do attitude. And there's going to be fear in doing that. So you have to kind of, put a lid on your fear. It's an adversary fear. We all have it. We're run by fear, and it robs us of things that we can otherwise, really be courageous about. And it's almost like built in to our brains to distract us from what we can do, from that present moment. And so the best thing you can do is kind of set your fears aside, if you can. It's, again, all of these things, we've all become used to it. We don't realize it until it's pointed out. So like if you're feeling anxious, for me, I actually analyze what I believe I'm feeling anxious about, and I've gotten really good. I will analyze it and really, really dig deep, because what I believe could have been causing my anxiety is not it. It was stemming from something else. And once I was able to identify what my fear was that was causing me to have anxiety, I would then write down like an alternative explanation. I would allow myself to take what was causing me to have the anxiety and give myself choices and options, and made me realize, okay, I don't need to have this fear. I don't need to have a fear that's causing me to have this anxiety. So, and you don't have to change it right away, because trust me when I tell you, there are a lot of obstacles in our subconscious that we really could change about ourselves that are roadblocks to preventing us in becoming the best version of ourselves. So even if those fears don't change right away, your mind is becoming more rational, and it's learning a new thought process. And it's all about being more rational. And in time, your brain is able to very quickly, after you start doing this, to kind of like fact check and say, oh, nope, not going to feel this way. Or, oh, I am starting to feel this way. Let me think, what is it caused by? This fear. Nope, I'm going to replace this fear with a can-do attitude and be less swayed by this anxiety. It's important to set like reasonable goals, which is why I had said earlier that I was not going to obsess about becoming the best version of myself and just keep going and going and going. I felt that I was setting myself up for disappointment and obsessing like crazy, and it would make myself the opposite of what my intention was. And that's why I set reasonable goals. I didn't want to overwhelm myself. So if I wanted to lose those 10 pounds that I gained, all I did was break it down into small steps. Thinking about it too much was making me crazy. Writing down a workout routine was making me crazy. I decided to divide it into small steps and say, okay, these 3 days a week, I'm going to work out in my gym at my house. And the other days I'm going to go walking, or I have a rower, or do that, and that was it. I didn't think about what my workout was going to be. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to work on my upper body today. No, I just know that I was going to go and start, and whatever I could do, I would do. And so it was like taking a step towards my goal every time. And as I started to do that, my self-confidence became much better, and I started to feel like I had become a better version of myself. And then I decided, well, maybe I can find a way to reward myself. Maybe I can empower myself with an achieved goal. Like, I just achieved this goal. What can I reward myself? What can I do? So I decided that I was going to create habits of like a reward system. So what would I maybe do? Okay, so let's say I had a really great week of eating healthy and exercising. I would, indulge in eating something that I would normally have been eating every day. Reward myself with giving myself something to look forward to. Practicing gratitude, getting on and doing my podcast, and the most important thing was having compassion for myself, not building myself up so much to where my fear of failing would come in, and therefore I would stop and I would not continue. I said, whatever little I can do, I'm going to have compassion for myself. Being the best version of yourself is about you, no one else. Like I had mentioned in my last podcast about dreams, they are under your control. No one can take that away from you. You can be as unrealistic and as irrational as you want to be because they are yours, and no one can take them away from you. And so that's kind of the same thing with having compassion for yourself. Being the best version of yourself is about you. Don't compare yourself to others. Know that everyone is different, on a different path, and everyone is unique. And what might interest you might not interest someone else. And if you're not where you want to be, have compassion for yourself. Stop always taking the route that we've all grown up with being hard on ourselves. Every time you say something to yourself or you act a certain way, you should try what I try, which is not always easy. But I say to myself, how can I look at this from a different perspective? So instead of being hard on myself because I didn't work out yesterday, instead I have compassion and I say, okay, I didn't work out, but I will tomorrow, or I will the next day. And that's it. And then I leave it alone. I don't go down that road of angst anymore. And I also don't compare myself to anybody. Oh, there was a time when I did, and I do not. I'm older and wiser now. And it's most important for you to do things that you enjoy. You have to find a life that is enjoyable to you, and check that negative self-talk. Just check it and replace it with empowering words. If you can find empowering words, you take the negative and you find the antonym for it. You find the opposite word, and that is the mindset you need to have. I'm unhappy. No. I say, I'm happy with these things. I feel that I can improve upon these other things. It's okay as long as you're managing yourself effectively. In order for you to understand how we can be like the best version of ourselves, we have to be our own boss. And that's all about everything I just said here, self-management. If you are really good with time management, that can really set you apart from stress and basically steer you towards like your ideal self. You're staying accountable and you're in control. And the most important thing through your journey is to stay positive. I've mentioned it in every breath. You have to learn how to stay positive because that's the only way I believe that you're going to learn how to be the best version of yourself. I said earlier, you are going to hit roadblocks. You're going to hit obstacles. That's a part of life. But how you deal with those roadblocks and obstacles is the most important. And if you stay positive and you cultivate these positive emotions, all it's going to do is help you to benefit from your journey rather than stop you because of staying negative. I actually now look at these obstacles as an opportunity rather than like me being defeated. It makes me kind of say, okay, well, I'm not looking at this roadblock as a negative thing. I'm going to look at this as an opportunity. I'm not going to be defeated. I'm going to stay positive and try and find a solution for this. I will not become self-defeated. And so, it is with this, everybody, that I feel are the best points that you, if you could master them, it is the best way to start on your journey for self-improvement or being the best version of yourself. I will forever be on a journey to become the best version of myself, but limited to where I only want to do certain things within a certain time frame. And that is it. Like I said earlier, I don't want to make myself nuts to become this best version of myself because I will never be satisfied. So figure out what it is. Limit yourself to a few things that you feel can only help. And then move on from it. I think it's probably the best thing you can do for yourself. And don't be afraid of finding out who your true self is, because it actually can be a very positive experience. Thanks, guys, so much for joining me. If you want to listen to my podcast aside from what you're listening to now, I'm on so many platforms: Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and feel free to touch base with me on my social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram under Nothing But Julie. And again, if you want to read my blog, it is nothingbutjulie.wordpress.com. Feel free to give me a shout out, say hi, let me know your thoughts. Feel free to subscribe and like my podcast. I hope you guys have a really amazing weekend.